welcome to Personality. I am your host, Lori Rawlings from Lori Rawlings and Associates, LLC, and I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, David Polk. He's the director of the State of Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards. He is a third-generation plumber by trade who completed a registered apprenticeship with Plumbers Local 75. He also holds a Bachelor of Applied Science degree focused in business administration and management from Cardinal Stritch University. And after spending more than a decade as a plumber with the City of Milwaukee, David became the Associate Dean at Milwaukee Area Technical College, which is the largest technical college in Wisconsin. He currently leads the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards, which creates, implements, and enforces policy regarding all things apprenticeship for the state of Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's apprenticeship program is the oldest registered apprenticeship model in America. He has led the Bureau to having a record number of registered and youth apprenticeships, and he's been recognized as one of 52 of the most influential Black leaders in the state of Wisconsin by the publication Madison 365 in 2022. David is also a board member of Secured Futures and an advisory board member of the Council on Adult and Experiential Learning, or CAEL. David, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lori.
Absolutely. So for those in the audience who aren't familiar with what registered apprenticeship is and what youth apprenticeship is, could you please tell us a little bit more about what they are?
Sure. Registered apprenticeship is the earn while you learn model, where not only are you learning in the classroom, contextual learning for your specific occupation, but you're also learning hands-on under a mentor, what we call a journey worker, who has also completed their registered apprenticeship or is the skilled worker of choice for that respective occupation. I love the model because what registered apprenticeship does is take not only that classroom learning and that on-the-job learning, it melds them together and creates a very tactile learning. You're learning with almost instant reinforcement of your competencies. Youth apprenticeship, on the other hand, is kind of a dialed down version of the adult registered apprenticeship model. In Wisconsin, it's specifically for 16 to 18-year-old juniors and seniors. There is a prescribed on-the-job learning model, but it's not as prescribed as registered apprenticeship. And what we want to do there is give a young person in high school an experiential sample of an occupation that they would like to go into. More recently, we've been doing a lot of what we call bridging, where a youth apprentice finishes high school and goes directly into their registered apprenticeship. But we have the most boisterous model of youth apprenticeship in the country. We're inching above 9,000 youth apprentice participants. And we've been a bit of the envy of the country with our youth apprenticeship program. And also, as you alluded to, the oldest registered apprenticeship program in the country. A lot of states around the country come to us for technical assistance on how we've run our program.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So earn while you learn. That's a really important feature. So folks who go through one of these registered apprenticeships, they're not only being paid to learn, but they're also not paying college tuition, correct?
Absolutely. You know, one of the affinities for participation in a registered apprenticeship is that model. You're a full-time employee. That is a requirement of registered apprenticeship. You must be a full-time employee of that respective company. And the other part is Wisconsin is the only state in America that legislates that an apprentice must also be paid during their schooling portion, or what we call related instruction. We're the only state that requires that. So not only are you paid on the job as a full-time employee while you're being mentored, but you're also paid your hourly salary while you're in school, whether that's, once per week, twice per week. We allocate, the legislation states, 8 hours per week for an apprentice to go to school for their classroom education.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, when I started working in the construction industry, I had never heard of apprenticeship. So my jaw dropped when I started learning about the apprenticeship model, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, "What? You get paid to go to school and learn, and you don't graduate with 100 or $200,000 in college debt, and you have a skilled trade when you get out? That's incredible."
It's kind of the best kept secret, unfortunately. And we're
Mhm.
working to dispel, that myth or that secret, so to speak, as we continue to expand. But for those of us that, like myself, I couldn't go to college, right out of high school. My parents didn't have the monies to pay for me to go off to college. And my family is full of tradespeople, as you alluded to. I'm a third generation plumber. Having the ability to go and make a sustainable wage while you're learning, while you're achieving, while you're getting your required certifications, it should be a expanded upon model.
Exactly, and I don't think we discuss it enough in high school, middle school, grade school. I know I certainly was not aware of this as a career path when I was coming up in my formative years. And I know we're doing more to reintroduce the concept to younger people, but I still think we're behind where we need to be publicizing this opportunity.
Yeah, we're just at the tip of the iceberg of what we can do with registered apprenticeship. And in my opinion, there should be a lot more occupations, and there will be a lot more occupations that will incorporate the registered apprenticeship model as we go into the future.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because, obviously this apprenticeship model has been around for a long time. We imported it from Europe. Wisconsin has had it in place for, over 100 years. Why is apprenticeship such a successful model for putting people to work?
Well, what the model provides very immediate tactile feedback of learning, right? So
Hmm.
if I'm an apprentice under Lori Rawlings and I'm on the job and she's teaching me this skill set, immediately I know if I've achieved that competency or if I need to work on it a bit more.
Hmm.
I myself, I'm a very tactile learner. Something that
Hmm.
I may read or watch a video, I need to try it immediately so that I
Right.
know that I have accomplished it, right?
Hmm.
In addition to that, the participants are paid for their education. And in Wisconsin, 95% of our employers actually have a model to pay for that academic portion of their registered apprenticeship. So again, for a person like myself that immediately after high school, I can't afford to go to college and pay for education. I need to work. I need to earn money.
Hmm.
This model becomes very, very appealing for those that fall in that same bucket as myself. And then the front end collaboration for the employers that are involved, their stake in the game, like they're putting an investment into an individual to skill them up from novice to skilled, right?
Hmm.
The apprentice in turn also has stake in the game because you want to take advantage of an opportunity that you're being completely paid for, right? You don't want to
Hmm.
lose this gem of an opportunity. So all parties have a significant stake in the game. The employers have a stake in the success of their apprentice. The apprentice has a stake in not losing this wonderful, wonderful opportunity that they've embarked upon.
That's a really good point. I mean, I like how you're emphasizing the connection between the employer and the apprentice from day one. So they're going to work for a real employer in their field from day one, which is a much better gamble than going to college and just kind of gambling that you're going to find a job at the end of 4 years. That's a really, really good point, and I think a key to why the model is so successful.
Yeah, one of the things that I always kind of impress upon, my academic counterparts is if you take the rudimentary model of an individual completing high school, going off to college, and then finding a job, well,
Hmm.
apprenticeship flips that on its head. You're
Hmm.
going to finish high school, find a job, become an apprentice, and then learn on the job.
Hmm.
So it's almost the inverse of one another, and where apprenticeship has a high success rate, and of course it's very there's an affinity for individuals to go that route.
So you mentioned that you're a really tactile learner and you're a third generation plumber. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your personal experience as a registered apprentice?
Yeah, so coming right out of high school, and going on that job site as an 18-year-old kid, the individuals that was working with back then, these guys they're old enough to be my father and grandfather. Like there was nothing in common. They're talking about going up north hunting, and they have a cabin aside from where they live, and I just got my first car less than a year ago. Like it was a real eye opener, and a bit of a grow up quick moment for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
But at the same time, once I completed my apprenticeship, and started that, process of, growing up and having my own responsibilities, it benefited me going through my apprenticeship and then going back to college, because I was a much more mature individual because of that registered apprenticeship experience.
Hmm.
One of the things with my plumbing apprenticeship, I had a very my experience was varied. I started my apprenticeship with a company that did a lot of industrial service and industrial remodel work, which it can be a little bit dirty. I was in foundries and things of that nature. But then I quickly pivoted and started working for another company that built hotels from
Cool.
the ground up, and then another company that did a lot of hospital work. So hospital work is very clean work.
Hmm.
You have to be very clean working in that hospital setting. And then I went to another company where we did residential service for housing authority in Milwaukee. So that was going door to door, dealing with customers at that time. And so I had a varied experience. And I always tell, young plumbers, and plumbers that have just completed their apprenticeship, like, although that varied experience was because of being laid off, like I
Hmm.
really appreciated it. Like once I completed, because I got to know so many different aspects of plumbing, from large to small to medium. So I hindsight, I enjoyed it. It was not that favorable going through it, but hindsight, I learned so much from a varied experience, of how expansive the plumbing trade could be.
Absolutely. And it's kind of, again, the inverse of an experience that a college student has. Again, you're just kind of focusing on theory in college, not really getting a ton of practical experience. So you don't really know, am I going to like this kind of work?
Yeah,
So, having the immediacy of being exposed to all the different facets of the trade while you're still in school
yeah.
just seems like a great way to set you up for success, because by the time you graduate from the apprenticeship and become a journey worker, you have a feel for, this is what I prefer. This is where I
Mhm,
want to focus. But you also have the ability to do all those different kinds of work
yeah.
too, so that you remain employable throughout your career. And it kind of recession proofs you, because you have the ability to do service and industrial and hospital. So that's
Mhm,
great.
mhm.
So then, after you worked for a long time as a journey worker, what sparked your interest in becoming a leader in the technical education and apprenticeship side of things.
Yeah, that's a funny story. So I was working. I had come out of the field and I was working as an inspector at the City of Milwaukee. And you know from your experience, when you're working in the field, your hours can vary
Hmm.
dramatically. There were times when I was an apprentice that we had to do overnight work because we had to shut down a wing of a hospital or shut down an elderly home, so we have to work overnight to create
Hmm.
tie-ins and things of that nature. But working at the city, my hours were very rudimentary. It was a regular 9 to 5. So there, I took advantage of that and said, okay, well, I can go back to school in the evening because I
Oh.
know I get off at this time. I know I can make school happen. So from there, working as an inspector day in and day out, for me, from coming from the field, the work got a bit monotonous.
Hmm.
So I was looking for growth somewhere. After I accomplished getting my bachelor's degree, I was looking for growth. I literally, was looking on Indeed and all those job platforms, and I found this associate dean at Milwaukee Area Technical College. Just applied for it. My wife helped me to redo my resume. And from there, they hired me on, and I've talked, affectionately about my dean, Dorothy Walker,
Hmm.
that hired me on at MATC in Milwaukee. She really invested and mentored me through that position, because you're bringing in someone that has no higher ed education experience. My only leadership experience was I had run jobs before. I was a foreman before I had come out of the field, and she really invested in me and had a vision for me that I didn't even have for myself. So from there, she really helped to pull me along on the academic side, and it really widened my purview of what apprenticeship is, how the technical college and higher education system works with apprenticeship and can expand upon the work in apprenticeship. But getting in there was by happenstance. Staying in there and getting me to where I am today, it was a vision. And it was vision by some, but I didn't know the vision at the time. Like I was just working and trying to learn. And I always tell young people that there are a few times in your life that someone believes in you and has a vision for you that you don't even see yourself.
Wow.
Take advantage of it. Believe that person when they tell you what you can be.
Wow. That's a really inspiring story. And I knew Dorothy Walker was a great person, but I had no idea how instrumental she has been in your career trajectory. That's really great.
Absolutely. I still talk with her. She still mentors me to this day, even in
That's wonderful.
retirement.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, and that's what's so inspiring, I think, just kind of about the apprenticeship and technical educational model generally for me is the mentorship. Um,
Yes.
you know, whether it's formally between the apprentice and the journey worker they get assigned to, or just sort of some of those informal mentorships that grow up through this model.
Mhm.
They're really a key component to people's career advancement.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in mentorship. It's not only the you can't be what you can't see. So to
Hmm.
have someone there helping you through any trials, or if you just need a little bit of coaching,
Hmm.
but also that person's investment of time into you. And it's a warm feeling when someone really wants to see you succeed and they're willing to carve out time to help you in that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And speaking of vision, I mean, you have a grand vision for apprenticeship that you're implementing in your current role as the director of the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards. So the Bureau under your leadership has expanded the apprenticeship model to sectors that haven't traditionally used apprenticeship, like nursing and teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those initiatives and the driving force behind expanding into those sectors?
Yeah, so, one of the things when I was at the technical college system, for me, that's when, that vision started to come to light. The inquisitive side of myself is, why can't what is precluding these occupations from not being apprenticeships? Like,
Hmm.
you see, I was able to see students day in and day out. They come in for their studies and then they go off and having conversations with them. They're going to work their part-time job, that has nothing to do with their studies right now, but they're just
Hmm.
trying to traverse their way through.
Hmm.
And that question comes up like, okay, well, what if that was an apprenticeship? Like, why isn't that an apprenticeship? So when I had come in, the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards was under the leadership of Karen, and then Josh Johnson had come in.
Hmm.
Once Josh Johnson had become director, the Bureau really started to put force upon expanding apprenticeship.
Hmm.
And under my leadership at the technical college, we were able to pilot the nation's first arborist apprenticeship.
Cool.
And it took off. It took off like wildfire. And from there, I was, working with my local ATR in Milwaukee, and we were building very local programs. It's very specific. An individual employer would reach out to me or reach out to the ATR, and we would collaborate to build that apprenticeship specifically for that employer, for their very specific needs. And I remember how we built the arborist apprenticeship was a big statewide measure,
Hmm.
and we were proceeding and building these local, very specific apprenticeships. So once I had come into the state as director, I kind of wanted to move away from those big, expansive, bring everyone to the table, and let's pilot on a local level.
Hmm.
Lori Rollings and Associates comes to us and says, "Hey, I want to build a blah 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 apprenticeship. Let's build that specifically for her and her team, and then show the rest of the state what we built, and
Hmm.
kind of mushroom it out as something that we've built." So from there, we've started to implement that practice, and it's proven to be very, very successful. Where employers duplicate each other all the time. We,
Right.
we just need that one employer to step out, and that's what's been happening.
Hmm.
That one employer says, "Hey, I have this need. Can we build this? What are the certifications involved?" We build it for that one employer, and then a bunch of different employers just copy off of that. Next thing you know, we have a statewide push for this brand new apprenticeship. So it's duly pronged, like that inquisitive portion saying, why can't these be apprenticeships? And then
Hmm.
dealing with it on the very local level, very specific to companies, and saying, hey, we built something special here. What say you, the rest of the state? Would you like to jump on board with this?
Hmm. It seems like such a logical way to solve our workforce shortage problem, especially in some of the fields like healthcare and teaching. Um, because it just seems like you get people actually doing hands-on work a lot more quickly through an apprenticeship model versus through the traditional college education route. Has that been your experience as well?
It has, especially with healthcare.
Hmm.
To your point, the rudimentary model of someone going to school, for 2, 3, or 4 years, and then being recruited, by the time they complete their schooling, they're recruited by every healthcare network in the state. Whereas we can get you on board early, we can train you up in this discipline. You're already working for us, and now we train you up and we keep you on. And what our healthcare apprenticeships are noticing is that the individuals that they bring up via apprenticeship are staying with their companies longer, because with this lack of individuals working a human capital problem
Hmm.
for employment, what they found is that individuals that go the rudimentary route, they're jumping ship to
Hmm.
different employers,
Hmm.
whereas the individuals that they bring up through apprenticeship and invested in, they're actually staying with the company and staying with the network much longer. And to your point, getting someone in early to start that learning on the job benefits because your pool of individuals that you can pick from now expands because you're not fighting for them after they get certified by their respective college where everyone is fighting for them. I
Right.
just need an individual that's really committed and really willing to learn,
Hmm.
and we can do the rest from there. So the swath of individuals you can pick from expands dramatically.
Yeah, and I can see why turnover would be less in a situation where someone came through an apprenticeship because the employer got to know them, they got to know the employer, they got to learn early in their apprenticeship whether they're actually going to be happy in this profession and whether they're cut out for it, versus finding out after they have a degree, oh, oops, I don't I don't like being around sick people or I don't like the 36-hour shifts. That's what I think is such a stroke of genius about the apprenticeship. It's a good way of getting people out there on the job right away. So in the construction industry, for example, they can find out quickly, oh,
Hmm.
it turns out I'm afraid of heights
Yeah.
or confined spaces um or in my case, like I wish I had found out I'm not cut out to work in an
Yeah.
office
Right.
before I went to college and law school.
Yep.
Oops.
Yep. The
So,
other part of that, Lori, is that the when you're bringing someone up via the apprenticeship model, not only
mhm,
are they learning the competencies and getting the certifications involved for their occupation, they're learning your company culture
mhm.
on the job. And we
Yeah.
both know that, employees that leave, they leave more abundantly for two reasons:
Mhm.
company culture or bad leadership.
Right.
When you're bringing them up uh, through their learning competencies and
Mhm.
embedding them in your company culture,
Mhm.
the likelihood that they stay with you long term grows dramatically.
Absolutely. Or in your case, they have the opportunity to move around to different
Yeah,
employers during the apprenticeship to find a good cultural fit.
yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. So, some of the other expansions that you've been doing include forming a partnership with the University of Wisconsin Stout,
Yeah,
um, making it the first 4-year university to offer related instruction for registered apprenticeship.
yeah.
Could you please tell us a little bit more about that partnership and why it's important?
Oh, it's very, very cool partnership. Historically, and this is not a battle that we fight. Let me preface. It's not a battle that we fight, but there's been this innate battle between apprenticeship, and going to a university
Hmm.
post high school,
Right.
right? And again, we don't fight that battle because there's a large number of apprentices that go to college and then say that that's not for them, and then they come over to us in apprenticeships, so, and we're fine with that.
Hmm.
But this partnership was very important to meld and kind of dispel that myth of that divide, right?
Hmm.
You can go through an apprenticeship and take classes at a university and get credit for it, and post apprenticeship continue your studies to this degree, right?
Hmm.
It shows that apprenticeship can be part of this permeability of growth of your
Hmm.
career ladder. That it can start with apprenticeship and be very successful, and that it can be executed not only at the technical college system, which is, at the birth and partnership with registered apprenticeship, but it can also be executed at the university level.
Hmm.
So what this does is it expands the conversation that we have with educators and even more importantly
Mm-hmm.
with parents of children that may be teetering on going apprenticeship or going university.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying, hey, via this partnership, you can do both. So it expands that conversation dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really, really proud of that because it puts the foot in the door to say, hey, let's do more of this. Like, what's next? And this beat our teacher apprenticeship to the punch, but it opens the door for that teacher apprenticeship, which will be the first registered apprenticeship to require a bachelor's degree, where
Oh,
the
very,
bachelor's degree is embedded in the registered apprenticeship.
very cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm hoping that the future of melding workforce and university learning will be the apprenticeship model.
That's that's excellent. And I love that you point out that people do have a misconception that college and apprenticeship are, parallel tracks that don't have any crossover, which couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, even before this partnership, there were a lot of apprenticeship programs that give people the opportunity to graduate from their apprenticeship with an associate's degree,
Yeah.
and then to take more classes to get a bachelor's degree. And that's really important from a recruiting standpoint because there are a lot of parents who are from generations like mine and older who have been socialized that college is the only path to success in our country.
Yeah.
And so, kind of breaking that stereotype, but also letting people know that if college is an important pathway for you, these aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Registered apprenticeship is a pathway to a college degree, and many people do pursue the associate's degree and a bachelor's degree and beyond. And the other thing I like about that too is that it opens people's eyes to the fact that completing an apprenticeship, it's not a dead end job. Like there are a lot of different pathways within the trades, for example, that don't mean you're going to be working with the tools in the field your entire career if that's not what you want to do. You have the ability to advance into a leadership role, to go into the office if you want to. A lot of people who own contracting companies started out as trades workers and now own multi-million dollar companies. Or there are folks like you who became inspectors and then went into the higher education part of the field,
Mhm.
or they go into leadership roles within their unions or within their own apprenticeship programs. Or they can be in middle management in a project management role throughout their entire career. So it's just such an expansive opportunity that I don't think people realize how many different career pathways begin with a registered apprenticeship.
Absolutely. I love that. And the largest pushback that I get is when I go to my wife's elementary school and I do career day and I
Mhm.
walk in with a sport coat on and I say that I'm a plumber and the kids go,
What?
"You don't look like a plumber." But that's what I lead with. That's where my career started. I lead every conversation with, "Hey, I'm a plumber." Like that. That's
Mhm.
that's where my career started. And to your point, there's so many different occupations under that moniker. I'm still a plumber. I went through registered apprenticeship, and I'm still someplace within that occupational galaxy. I'm still working in that space. I'm just on this side of that occupation.
So I know that another passion of yours is promoting financial literacy as an important component of workforce development. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about why that's important and some programs that are helping teach financial literacy?
Yeah, so one of the things when I had come into my apprenticeship very, very young, in not having a certain level of financial literacy, what's the first thing that we do once we start making good money? You get out and we
Spend it.
buy a car.
Like you buy a car.
We buy a car. We buy a car. We buy a truck.
Hmm.
And I just watched it over and over with my counterparts, and then I got involved with Secure Futures, and I started to volunteer for them, going into classrooms and talking to young people about financial literacy. Of course, when I first started there, writing a check was a thing. I don't think people write checks anymore, but uh, but it was balancing a checkbook. What is credit? What is applying for a credit card? What is a credit score? Things of that nature. But when I was volunteering in the classroom, not only was I telling them about those financial literacy principles, I was also telling them about the skill trades and
Hmm.
how that can be an opportunity for them post high school. So melding that together, there were young people that I had come across just, at the grocery store, and they said, "Hey, you're
Hmm.
you're that money guy that came to my school and you were talking about writing checks and stuff. Hey, I signed up and I'm a laborer."
That's
And
so
with the
cool.
laborers, just really, really cool. So I think that, for all the things that registered apprenticeship has to offer, the financial literacy should be part of it.
Hmm.
This is in a lot of times with registered apprenticeship, I'll say probably 90% of the time, going through that registered apprenticeship is the most money that individual has ever made in their life.
Hmm.
And having financial literacy and how to handle that is just as important to me. So I'm a huge proponent. I still volunteer with Secure Futures. I'm on their board, but it's hugely important.
Hmm.
So individuals are set up not only to complete their apprenticeship, but they're set up for life, like the real life challenges that come with, making the most money you've ever made in your life.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I think something else people don't realize about registered apprenticeships is how lucrative they are and how lucrative being a journey worker is once you graduate. I mean, in the skilled trades, for example, most people, when they graduate from their 5-year apprenticeship, are making six figures right
Easy.
out of,
Yeah.
yeah, right out
Yeah.
of the gate. And they don't have any college debt to pay off, and so the lure of buying a car and a truck and
It's
just all the
there.
toys, a snowmobile and a jet ski,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it
Why
becomes
wouldn't
very
I? I'm making six figures. Why wouldn't I?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important to, steer people in the direction of, putting some of that in your 401k,
Yep.
investing in a house because it makes home ownership attainable, which is really important these days when the vast majority of Generation Z are not going to be able to afford a house at the same
Yeah.
age we were.
Yeah. I mean, Lori, via my plumbing apprenticeship, I literally bought my first home at 21.
That's amazing.
21 years old, and I bought a duplex. So, I'm a firm believer that all of our apprentices should have access to know what to do and how to do financially as they proceed throughout their career.
Mhm.
Because as we talked about earlier, finishing that apprenticeship is not it's not the stop. Like there's so many more things you can do, and being equipped financially and making the right investments and the right moves and putting a little bit of money away for a rainy day, like everyone should be skilled up in that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we've kind of just covered the tip of the iceberg in terms of your priorities as the director of the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards. What are some of your other priorities and, the rest of your vision for the Bureau?
Yeah, I really want to continue the expansion of registered apprenticeship, into what we call emerging sectors. You know, we're working on a bunch of different initiatives around brand new apprenticeships. One of the things I really want to do is continue toward the diversification of apprenticeship, getting more women and more people of color into the registered apprenticeship model. not only because it can be so lucrative, but the benefit of people like myself that I don't have the money. My parents don't have a trust fund set up for me to go to college, and getting
Mhm.
into all that debt very, very early on, it's just not beneficial for myself or my family. So creating more access for people of diverse backgrounds to get into registered apprenticeship, and women going into non-traditional occupations, expanding our model to ensure that people that were just as involved have access to registered apprenticeship. We have a very specific initiative with the DOC to try to ensure those individuals that are coming out that were just as involved have a pathway to get into registered apprenticeship that they might have had some training for while they were inside, and kind of procuring that pathway for them. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is a very holistic approach to apprenticeship. What I call the social contract of registered apprenticeship, and how we take care of our apprentices. We recently partnered with Mentor Greater Milwaukee to kind of push the platform up of how we mentor our apprentices, both on and off the job, because a lot of the reasons some apprentices don't complete their apprenticeship, it has to do with things that are happening outside of the job,
Mhm.
personal problems that unfortunately are attacked a bit too late, and unfortunately we lose an apprentice when that apprentice could have had some assistance to kind of beat those problems to the punch and keep them in to complete their respective apprenticeship. I love that we are doing more bridging of youth apprenticeship to registered apprenticeship.
Mhm.
We had an all-time high last year for 2023. I definitely want to expand upon that, because if we're able to get more youth apprentices bridging, that also means that our messaging to the parents of those young people is hitting the mark.
Mhm.
That the parents are accepting that their young person wants to pursue this career via registered apprenticeship after participating in the youth apprenticeship. And we're doing a great job of that. Again, an all-time high of youth that have gone directly into their respective registered apprenticeship. And then the certified pre-apprenticeship strategy, right? I want more pre-apprenticeships to have direct entry into registered apprenticeships, so that when we're explaining to the public the benefits of registered apprenticeship, and they say, hey, I would love to get involved, I don't have experience in this, we can say, hey, go to this pre-apprenticeship program.
Mhm.
They'll skill you up, and you can go directly into that occupation
Mhm.
from there. I want to have that more of that conversation. So I want to expand upon the acceptance and direct entry from our pre-apprenticeship programs, and I think that's an approach that creates a very nice ecosystem, what I call our apprenticeship ecosystem, inclusive of all of those buckets.
That's awesome. So, for those who aren't familiar with the concept of a pre apprenticeship program, can you expand a little bit on what that is?
Sure. A pre-apprenticeship is a quick training. It may be a boot camp for a week. It could be a training that goes over a couple of months, and it level sets for an individual to gain the entry level competencies to get into the respective registered apprenticeship that certified pre-apprenticeship serves. So I use myself as an example. There may be a plumbing pre-apprenticeship out there that an individual would go into to skill them up and get them ready to pursue the plumbing registered apprenticeship.
So, they might cover some basic things like basic job site safety and what are the tools of the trade? How do you use them? That sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Not only tools, may take them through some drafting, maybe some things that a normal apprentice would go through in that very first year to
Hmm.
make that individual a bit more appetizing for an employer. Like, hey, you went through this program, you're skilled up to this level. I would bring that person on to work for me as an apprentice.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. So we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you would like our audience to know.
Yeah, it has been a joy thus far leading the state's apprenticeship program. We've had so many things that we've accomplished in 2.5 years now under my tenure. And I'm excited about the possibilities of Wisconsin's apprenticeship system. We piloted our first registered nurse apprenticeship last year. We'll be doing teacher apprenticeship, and it's just very, very exciting times. I want Wisconsin to continue to be the envy of the nation when it comes to an apprenticeship system.
Yeah, and I feel confident that with you in charge, it will continue to be the envy of the nation and just continue to grow and do amazing things.
I really appreciate that.
I really appreciate you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and hear more about all the amazing things you're doing at the Bureau and for the apprenticeship ecosystem. So it's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lori. Great to be here.
Thank you. So thank you to our audience for joining us today. Information about Wisconsin's apprenticeship system will be in the show notes. I'll include a link to our the website for the Bureau of Apprenticeship Standards, so you can learn more about all the great things that they're doing.